CKLA Chat. I am DLC Foster-Yankey, and I'm joined by my co-host.
DLC Ashley Giles. Nice of you to join us today.
Yes, so we are in the final unit of 4th grade, Unit 8. And in this video, we're going to be chatting about Lesson 4, A Real Adventure. So our core text for this lesson is Chapter 3, A Real Adventure Begins. And students are reading this chapter to learn more about the upcoming voyage and Long John Silver's character. Every time I read that now, I think about getting some Long John Silver.
Long John Silver. Yes.
Getting hungry.
That was my first connection. When I saw that name, I just knew. And then knowing a little of the background to the story, like, oh my gosh, that's where they got it from.
All right, so we have three lesson components for lesson 4. First is reading for 40 minutes, where the teacher will introduce the chapter, read chapter 3. They'll have the chapter discussion and then do some word work for the realm. They'll move on to language for 35 minutes, where they will discuss grammar, relative pronouns, and frequently confused words. And in morphology, they're going to get some more practice with style. Finally, in writing, they're going to be writing descriptive details for their adventure stories. I kick it off with reading. Our cub is students will know key details about the upcoming voyage and the character of Long John Silver. They'll understand how Jim's view of Long John Silver varies from the beginning to the end of the chapter, and they'll be able to summarize the upcoming voyage and describe the character of Long John Silver in depth by adding notes about Long John Silver to a character chart and writing a summary. So for our reading component, we have our formative assessment. Here, let me grab my activity book off the floor. Okay.
Me too.
All right, so this is activity 4.2. And on here, we basically have a bunch of open-ended questions, literal, inferential, and evaluative questions that the students are going to be answering, and they are expected to cite the page number where they found evidence in the text. These are questions answering as they read. There are 6 total, and beginning with question 2. Question 2 is a 2-part question. It looks like part B of that is evaluative.
Mm-hmm.
So that is our formative assessments about what they're doing in reading. So first, the teacher is going to introduce the chapter for 5 minutes. Same routine that they have followed the whole year. Teacher will review the vocabulary, focusing, I suggest, on those tier 2 words: shroud, captivate, deduce, brim, and scoundrel. Then the teacher, ahead of time, before the teacher taught the lesson, they should have decided their groups. Those 2 group lessons, there's a teacher group and then a second group where the students work independently or with a partner, up to the teacher to decide how to do that. But you shouldn't, if you are an administrator or skills, you shouldn't walk into the classroom and see the teacher like trying to figure out in that moment who's going to be in which. That's something that they should have set up ahead of time as their advanced preparation. So they're dividing their students into 2 groups. In the teacher group, the teacher is having students preview the question on the activity page first. Then they read the text aloud or silently. It alternates, with the student being the one who reads the text aloud or silently. The teacher prompts them with the guided reading supports to answer the questions on the activity page, okay, which I really like. So they read the question first, then read the text with that question in mind. Then finally, they go ahead and answer the question. And if the teacher sees that they're struggling, they come in with those guided reading supports to help them to answer the question. So they are working on that for 20 minutes. They move on to a 10-minute chapter discussion, whole group, where the teacher asks two different evaluative questions, which are really good opportunities to have some good full body discussions, because evaluative questions are really based on your opinion and how you're able to back them up. And see, they're going to add some information about Captain Smollett to their character charts, as well as some additional notes about Long John Silver, not Silvers. The teacher is going to engage students in a discussion about each of the characters introduced in the chapter, as well as that additional information about Long John Silver. Students are expected to draw on specific details in their responses, such as descriptions of words or actions in text. They'll record that information on activity page 1, their character chart. And for word work, 5 minutes, they're going to go over the word brim, following their same routine. The teacher will ask students for examples of someone or something brimming, providing them with the sentence stem. Blank was brimming with blank because. And they will wrap up word work with a multiple meaning word activity. I think we talked about one of these before, where basically the teacher reads sentences, and in this lesson, yeah, I think it has to use their fingers, yeah, to show the teacher which meaning of the word matches the sentence.
Yep.
And that concludes reading.
Okay, and then that brings us to our language components, which the focus will be for the grammar. Student will use relative pronouns who, whom, and whose correctly in a sentence. And they will also need to know how to correctly use these commonly confused words, there, and there. I will say personal connection, the who, whom, and whose. I mean, even for me, that especially when you're writing, in this lesson, it tells you when speaking informally, you know, it really doesn't matter. But in writing, when it's the informal writing, like really being correct, about using those. And so I know personally, I can admit my faults. That is something I always have to go back on Grammarly and look up and make sure that this is correct because it's confusing. So if it's confusing for us, adults, imagine how it would be for students.
Glad you said
So,
that.
yeah,
I never use whom. I have never used whom in a sentence.
right. And then there's a specific time and place when you should use that. And so in this lesson, that's what we are teaching our students. So internalizing this part of the lesson, all parts are very important, but especially something that's confusing to yourself as a teacher, an adult, make sure we're not confusing our kids. Okay. All right. So with that said, let's take a look at the formative assessment. And actually, this is going to be a part of a take home activity assignment. So you're not going to have time to go over this. You will be doing multiple activities throughout the lesson. This is the take home activity that's associated with the actual lesson. And so basically, at the top, it gives them the definition or when to use the who, whom, and whose. And then they have sentences, and they have to combine two sentences together using the correct word relative pronoun. And so that's what the students will be doing as a take-home activity. So this is tied to the lesson, to the objective, but this is not what they're going to be. They're going to be doing other activities, like I said. So it starts off with, keep in mind, this lesson is 25 minutes long. Of that, 35 minutes is 25 minutes long. So you're going to start off, tell the students that we're going to talk about relative pronouns today. Remind them that the pronoun replaces the noun. Every pronoun refers to a specific noun. And to me, in my notes, when I internalized, I wrote, this is my explicit teaching here. So I did write that on the side. I annotated that in my teacher's guide. And you go over pronouns. You talk about the ball. Would it be it or she or they? So you're just you're like reviewing with them. How would you replace this noun with the pronoun? As you're doing that, you're going to have a poster made in advance on the relative pronouns poster, referring students back to that. Then you're going to go further and explain the two main categories of pronoun would be people, okay, and then there's things. And so there's a lot of advanced prep. They say have sentences written on the board ready for students to manipulate and you to manipulate during this modeled and guided instruction. Um, so you're looking at sentences and you're actually using the rules, the usage rules, and deciding how would you replace these nouns. And so, like I said, it's bulleted step by step, making sure you're clear in your explanation. And for me to be explicit, I would need to read each bullet. So but I'm going to leave that for you guys to internalize on how to explicitly teach it because it's right here in the curriculum. But you are showing them how to replacing it, showing them your thinking, telling the students why you would replace that noun for this relative pronoun. So there's a lot of sentences that they have you prepare in advance on chart paper versus on like the board. Um, Remember, there is a support here. And I put in my teacher's guide, I said, this is teaching and learning. So they're telling the teacher, they're giving them a support. A helpful way to decide whether to use whom or whom is to think about the sentence in the form of a question. So to me, that was very important. So show your kids that strategy. Think of this as a question. Whom is it to? Whom is it for? And that will help them to be able to select or differentiate which whom, or whose to use. So the important thing for me that I got from this to remember is that relative pronouns are replaced by two categories: the things, the objects, and the subjects. So two things you need to understand. You're going to ask students which relative pronoun appears in the sentence, whom or who, and so you'll have that discourse. Students on the board, they'll have to underline, is this a subject or is this an object, and what's the, which one is which, what do I replace it with? And it also explains in here to explain to the kids when you are writing formally, this is when it's very important to use who, whom, and whose. And it indicates when you're speaking, it's acceptable. It's okay to be more relaxed and like use them interchangeably. Then you look at another sentence. There's a lot of sentences, and you're showing kids how to combine them using those words. How to combine two sentences using the proper relative pronoun. So explicit teaching, all this, you're asking questions for the kids. This is a hard concept. So once you get past the who, whom, and whose, then you are reminding the kids. Oh yeah, go ahead, Sarah. It's a lot. Go ahead.
No, I was just, it is a lot. I'm thinking about all this writing on the page, like as you're talking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
just that one part of the lesson component. And as you're talking about the explicit, seeing the word explain a lot. Teacher explains, 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 explains. And I'm always wondering, like, as the teacher is explaining, what are the students doing? So I'm just wondering, I would wonder how the teacher would engage students as they're doing all this explaining. What are the kids going to be doing to keep
Well,
them?
and I'm glad you asked that. So there are multiple sentences that they want them to prepare in advance. And so, of course, when you do the first set of sentences, I would model that first piece and the first sentence, and then like the second sentence, have them pick out, the noun that'll replace the pronoun, or what will we combine. Like I would kind of do like a back and forth. I do the first one, okay, now you do the next one. So there are multiple sentences that will allow for that
So while she got disconnected, so while she's coming back, no, that's it. I'm thinking of some type of manipulative, maybe having those sentences and on sticky notes. I was on the fly, just
Go
thinking
girl.
of
You got it.
a
You
way to
got it.
make the activity manipulative or
Okay.
kinesthetic to get the students engaged. Like you said, having those sentences, maybe on sticky notes, having who's in the whom, and having them sticky in the sentence. Like,
Yeah.
they have something to do while they're
Yeah. I'm just thinking we're gonna have to build in some supports because really, if you notice in your teacher guide, there are no supports on the side for this for this explicit teaching of this lesson. They have no support. So we as teachers are going to need to be like, well, what do my students need? How are they going to manipulate? So I love that idea with the sticky notes. And maybe having your one sentence on the board, or your couple sentences, and then those you do sentences or that we do, let them like have those sticky notes for them, have them prepared in advance, I guess. We don't want to waste time having them copy the sentence. So yeah, thinking about maybe cutting some papers. You already had it typed out or something. Something's going to have to happen because there are no supports. We're going to have to build in our own supports here, to be honest.
That that I know I struggle with. Like I said, I don't use whom.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Thinking about how to support choosing the correct word.
Right. So, and then there's a quick transition too. So you teach them all this about who, whom, and whose, and then you go right into, and so on. We can go back. So this is a relative pronoun. So then we're not even done yet. Then you are reviewing homophones too. Okay, there, and there. I mean, that's not as confusing, but that's commonly confused. It's not as a hard of a concept as the who, whom, and whose. But students still struggle with when to properly use their, and they are, right? So it starts off, the teacher's reminding them. She also gives them other examples of other homophones, the 2 and 2, 4 and 4, 8 and 8. She's writing some sentences on the board. Students will read the sentence aloud, and they're going to identify the homophones in the sentence. They should hopefully be able to identify there, and there. Talk about the contraction there. So you're reviewing this, then students have to use these words and sentences. So the teacher's explaining, reviewing, and then at the end of this, students have to, first I said know the function. I did say the we do on here would be you're giving them sentences, and the kids have to, at the end of this, in order to let you know if they understand the different forms of there, and there, the homophone, the teacher is going to give them sentences, and they're going to have like a fill in the blank, and they have to fill in the blank with the correct use for there, and there. And then it says, as an exit slip, students will write a sentence using at least 2 of the 3 homophones. So you read the sentences first, and then at the end, they have to create their own sentence written correctly with the proper usage of 2 of the 3 theirs. Dang, that's heavy, huh?
Yeah, I know you said it'll help students know correct there to use, but I have read enough social media posts to know adults
Yes.
struggle.
All the time, right? And as
Correct
literacy
there.
lovers, we notice that. Like, really? Come on.
That's
I'm
not
too old
correct.
for that. Too old for that.
You're gonna
So,
save some lives.
right. So that completes our grammar component. Now we're going to go over to the morphology. We are discussing the word bio, which this is a review. So you'll start off with, I said this was an instructional strategy. The kids will have some index cards, A on one card, B on the other, and you're going to give the students 2 word choices. Each will have the word bio in it. You're going to read a statement, and the kid has to decide which bio it agrees with. For example, if I give you this sentence, we learned about the similarities and differences between how house and cat and lions live and develop. Is that biology or is that biography? And so hopefully they would say that's biology because that is the study of. So they would have to hold up the right card. Then you give them 2 more words, biodegradable or symbiotic or symbiotic. So you're reading the sentence, and they have to choose which word goes based off the root. That's breaking the word apart. So that's why the root words are so important, because you're able to attach that root to any word, and it'll change the meaning. So they have to listen to the context of the sentence to figure out which word it is by breaking the word down by its meaning. So that's a good activity as well.
I like
And to
that
me, I said,
activity.
huh?
I like that activity. This might be petty. This is probably a petty
Okay.
teacher move.
Uh
But
huh.
when students do things like hold up the index cards with thumbs up, thumbs down, or when I watch in other classes, I always see. a kid who isn't quite sure of the answer. So
They
they wait
listen.
for everybody else to hold up their card and then they hold it up. So
Yeah.
I was thinking, like, when I was reading this, I would probably do like a quizzes or a Kahoot or something. You don't have that. Like, I really know if you understand, not if you're copying someone else's
Right,
understanding, which
right,
I think
right.
can happen with index cards.
Right, absolutely. So that's how you'll begin, but that's a great way to begin like that. Who gets it? Informally assessing right there, right? So that's a good idea too. Um, it said it indicates if you see that your kiddos are struggling, you may need to reteach. So keep that in mind. So you are informally assessing when you're doing this first part of the with the index card activity. You're doing this in case you need to reteach, and so they did indicate that. And then once you see what they know, then I'm sorry, the activity page first. They do have an activity page that the students will complete after the activity, and basically they are doing exactly what you did with the sentences and choosing the right word that fits in the blank based off the context. That's part one. Part two, it has a pair of sentences. One sentence is used correctly and the other one's incorrectly. The student has to circle the correct response. And they have a challenge question on the back of this sheet. They have to write a complete sentence using the word bio with correct punctuation and capitalization. And that'll be the end of our morphology component for the root word bio. 10 minutes only.
I was thinking if you did like a Kahoot or something instead of the index cards, then you can use that data to know when they get to the activity page, this is who I need to pull for somebody to work on this with them because
Absolutely.
they ain't got it.
I love it. Being intentional and strategic. You got to maximize your time right there. Yeah, pay attention. So I love it. Thank you.
I think you can see that with index cards and know like this
You
is who
can't
I need.
remember unless you're,
Yeah.
doing your, making your anecdotal notes. So our final section or component of this lesson is your writing component, where students will use descriptive details to write about a character. And so remember, they've talked about the setting in their stories. They've discussed the characters, right? They've sketched the character. And so now, and we talked about in a previous reading lesson, they talked about the descriptive characters within Treasure Island. So for this activity, they're going to refer back to 3.2, where they jotted down their character descriptions and information about their character. Okay, and so you're going to explain. So they're going to refer back to this activity page. Um, so remember, make sure when they're starting this, because this has already been completed. If I am,
Yeah, they've been working on it.
yes, this is already completed. So ensuring that your students are aware and the expectations are set for how this should have been completed. So it starts off with, this is for 15 minutes only. You're going to talk about making your characters come alive using descriptive language and details. For example, your senses, what they look like, what they say. So basically using your five senses to reveal your character, to show how your character, what they look like, what they smell like, and things that they touch. So once you're gonna prepare a sentence in advance, you're gonna have an example sentence. The girl had brown hair. This is your model. You're going to show them how you're gonna take a sentence and you're going to add descriptive details to this sentence. So together, you are going to revise the sentence that's provided, this simple sentence, and you're gonna make that more descriptive. And so you're going to follow the prompts. You're going to support and guide. They have given us support questions to help students transform this sentence. So, how long was her hair? So getting them to think, what could we add to add some descriptive elements into the sentence? How does her hair feel? What kind of brown hair does she have? Curly, I don't know, kinky, coily, all that, stringy, whatever. And then it says you're going to divide your students into groups. And then that's when they are going to complete their activity, page 3.2, going back and adding that descriptive language, descriptive details, sensory language into their writing about their character. Teacher is actively monitoring, walking around for support, um, prompting students. The support to the side says you're prompting students using probably these guides, these guiding questions to help them think of ways in which they can add some descriptive language. Then at the end, students will share out what they have, how they have transformed their descriptive sentences about their characters. That's it. And make sure they keep this for a future upcoming lessons because they will come back to 3.2. And that will complete lesson 4.
You know, real quick, I know we talked earlier about there being a class story that when the class is writing together. So I think it would be cool if the teacher, like as we do, the class completed that bottom part, the my character part for the story that they're writing together, coming up with that, collaborating on the character.
Yeah, that'll really help them, just to help them get that thought and how to do it. We do it together with our class story, and they'll love that. Then take ownership in there. It's like, okay, this is how we did it. I'm going to use some of those techniques, but I'm going to add this because they didn't take my idea or something, or I want to add whatever I want to add in my story. So, yeah, I think the class story would be awesome.
Also, I'm looking at the activity page. Like for the bottom box, what does your character's voice sound like? Like maybe providing a word bank for different voice sounds like gravelly or squeaky, things like that. And how do they move? Like different movement words, like they shuffle when they walk or they.
Love it.
Yep.
Very
So just
detailed.
Supporting, yeah, because we know there's going to be some misconceptions and some struggles there. So thinking of what they might need.
Right, to support the kiddos. Absolutely. Love it.
Well-rounded characters.
Word banks.
Yeah. Thinking of all that because I actually want to write a story with these characters.
Right. I want a good adventure story.
Yes, I want to do it. I
want to be able to draw your character based off what you wrote.
Yes.
To a T.
That's the goal.
Yes. So that's something you can tell your kids. If I read about your character, am I able to sketch them? Or will things be missing? Think about that. That's a good question to ask a kid. That'll really help them say, think about, well, what else should I add? Did I include this, about my character? So.
Love it. Right. So like I said, that is lesson 4. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.
Thank you.